just bringing everything you need to the table for pre-production. And also really, having a sense of the entire project is very important, because, you can go into a shoot day without thinking all the way through to the edit. And so it's important to know, okay, so we're coming in here, what's our shot list? I think shot listing is something that sometimes gets thrown out the window. And of course, Justin can speak more to that too as a DP, but like, having that shot list and saying, okay, we've got to make sure we get, a street sign and an establishing of a house, or, let's make sure that we get just a little bit of like driving in this neighborhood, or all these little elements that if you don't think it through ahead of time, you'll end up in post and going, why didn't we get a little bit of like the backyard sprinkler or anything that we need to get from here to there, So, pre-production in that sense. And then also, I think the more experience you get as a producer, the more you look at pre-production in terms of like, what's the realistic amount of things we can get done today? Because, you have to think about, how much setup time is it going to take for this shot? How much setup time for that shot, lunch in and out, where are we going to do that? All that kind of stuff really adds up to whether or not you're going to have a day where you're going to, focus on the most important stuff, or a day where you're kind of scrambling because you didn't really have a realistic view of how long it was going to take to get set up, and that kind of stuff. So that's, I guess, a long way to
Joel,
get there.
I think you make great points about how if you start the day behind because you have sort of an unrealistic schedule, it can really get to everyone, and everyone feels like they're already sort of like against it and, and behind. It's just a crappy feeling. And so I think it's always smart to have enough of a buffer in there to where you feel like you're at a good pace, but you're not actually, like having to sacrifice immediately. I think that's a really important thing, because a lot of people get sort of a little overconfident in the beginning, and then you end up getting half of it done. It's sort of like if you're running a race or a marathon or something, and like if you sprint the first 3 miles, you're not going to be able to keep that up, and your pace is going to be worse in the long run. Whereas if you would have just done like a good, honest pace the whole day because you knew what you needed to get accomplished, it's a way more efficient way to go. And I see a lot of that. That happens a lot of times with sort of new productions that don't know what they're doing.
I think there's a lot of also like, who are making sure that you have the DP type gaffer involved in that pre-production conversation too, because I know a lot of times projects I've been involved in, you've got client and producers, but you're not really talking to the actual people. Okay, we're going to do this and this and this, and they might say, you bring in the DP, bring in the gaffer, key production people, and they're going to say, well, if we did this first, then I'd already be set up for that, and then that would save some time, be more efficient, things like that. Well, if we come in and we like light the whole house first, then we can do that. Or, whatever it is, you're getting, above the line, and more importantly, oftentimes below the line contributions are key.
Very cool. Okay. And so does that take practice, or is it something that you can do in the pre of like staying on time? And, is it just an experience thing?
Definitely a lot of experience. Go ahead, Mauricio.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things, have a lot of experience. And another one, I think you need a little bit of a talent, but it's not a very traditional talent, because I've been in a couple of productions, big ones, and I remember these working with the AD. I was helping the director, not as an AD, as a, I don't know, co-producer. And the AD was planning a bunch of stuff in pre-production for each day. And he was like, I don't know, 15, 20 years working in the industry. And then when we sat down with the director and him and the other producers, and we started going through his days, I told him, like, I don't think your timing is realistic. I think you're kind of not really good. I mean, he laid out everything perfectly. I mean, I'm not saying his work was bad, but the timing, you really need to be really good calculating times and know how much is going to take everything, and have at least a plan B and buffer and plan C and D. And he only had like a plan B. And I was telling him, like, I think your times are a little bit tight. I don't think we're going to take like 30 minutes and, set up the whole stage. It's probably going to be an hour. And I don't think we're going to spend like 20 minutes in makeup. Probably is going to be like hour and a half. for the the talent, but for the man, he put an hour. For men's and makeup, they just take like 20 minutes. It's like not really a lot of the time. So you need to be really good calculating times. You can be a really good producer, but not a lot of people is really good calculating time. And it seems something very insignificant, but is really, really important. And I saw that issue 2 times in 2 different persons. So, and then I learned like, okay, you need to find somebody with experience, but also who is really good planning and thinking ahead on how long you're gonna take everything. Basically.
That's hard fought experience, you know? And a lot of times too, like having a strong priority list, you know, and you can come in and get your key stuff out of each setup, and sort of thinking through your day and setups is very important. And then, you know, checking in where you're at. Have you gotten everything? Okay, maybe now we can try something more artistic, but making sure we have all of our coverage. That, you know, stuff like that's key. Yeah. And the more you plan and the more you understand your day, then the more creative you can get too, because you do have to build in a little bit of time for experimentation, trying something different. I think that like you'll have a lot of shoots that feel successful and then end up feeling really bland in the end because you didn't sort of build in enough time to try something different, you know, or to, you know, since you didn't pad your day enough, you know, you just were cooking so fast that every shot was kind of boring. So, you know, if you really want to do something exceptional, you do need to give yourself time. You know, you have to find that balance between making a good day and having time to do interesting things.
So timing is key. Planning and timing is definitely key.
Mm-hmm.
What are some examples that you've seen of pre-production failing?
Not bringing enough of the prop that's super important to the shot. You know, like if you have a hero prop and they haven't thought through about like, oh, that thing might get wet, or might explode, or might have this other thing happen. That has definitely been a problem before.
Another one is food. A lot of the time they have pretty much a really good pre-production in general for the actual production, but you can tell when the pre-production was not really well because at the time when you have lunch or, you know, the breaks, there is not enough food for everybody, or the food comes in late, or in that kind of stuff. You can tell, okay, here's a little issue there with the pre-production, and food is key in a production, at least from my point of view. If people is not happy because they don't have a really good meal, that makes the total production day a little bit rough.
Yes. I've do on camera as well, and I've been on a lot of commercial sets. And speaking about having like the hero prop, I was on a commercial set for a restaurant chain, and I had one job, which was to grab the bag, the to-go bag, and pull it out of the scene. It was my only job. They only had 3 of this bag, and 2 were placed here, and then 1 was the one I was grabbing. And I only had to do it a couple times. And wouldn't you know, I dropped it. I dropped the bag. I had one job and I dropped the bag. And of course it like puts a mark on the bottom of the bag, and it's not perfect anymore. But I did it after we shot the last take. So I was like, oh my gosh, because they didn't have another bag, because bags fold in like we on the sides a certain way, and they didn't have another one of that bag. So I was saved because we got the shot. But if we hadn't, they didn't have another bag. And if they did, we would have been okay. But yeah,
super important. I think one more thing too is like, you really need to worry about see, what was it? I actually lost it. Shoot, keep going. I'll come back to me.
That's okay. I was just saying if there's any other tips to prevent kind of those pre-production fails, but it seems like preparation is like the big key of like having
lots of communication. Like don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to like have that emergency call the night before. You know, another thing that I've done before, and Justin, you can get in on this too, is like, when you're loading up in the morning or you're getting together at night, like gather up in a circle and be like, okay, do we have the lenses? Do we have the batteries? Do we have the media? Like just do a stupid dummy check before you leave your
double, triple check all the time.
Yeah, and it's just talk it through before you get in the car, just at a real like basic level. Like what are the things that are going to completely derail this shoot if we don't have? Do we have the tripod plate? If you don't have the tripod plate, you're done. you better hope that this shoot's going to work handheld. So, stuff like that. Do we have the screws for the tripod plate? Just everyone gather up in a circle. We're doing a green screen shoot. Anybody got the green screen? It's amazing how easy it is to forget that stuff. And how each one of the tough thing about, film video production is that there is just a million little details. And if one gets dropped, it really can end the day. So it is super important to, have that big checklist right on down, and talk it through, because everyone can, you can get barraged with 1,000 spreadsheets, but it's okay to, like, guys, before we leave, let's talk it out, that's helpful.
Yeah, there's a thing where, you show up and they're like, well, where's the widget? And you're like, dude, I brought 700 other widgets. I forgot that one. And they're like, yeah, but we need that one. And you're like, we need all 700. I don't know. So it's definitely good to talk about that. And one little thing can ruin everything. What I was going to say earlier is, like, lunches can't be underestimated, I think, or overestimated, or however it goes, because it is super important, not only because food, obviously, but, like, it's a matter of, if you don't take half an hour to sit down and, like, decompress and not think about what you're doing, or talk to the people, like you're saying, get a different perspective on what you're actually in the middle of, then I think it slows you down the rest of the day. It's much like the other thing I was talking about of trying to sprint at the beginning. Like, not taking lunch makes everything after lunch slower. So if you're doing a walking lunch and they're like, it's fine, it's just pizza, it doesn't matter, and you're still going, like, your brain doesn't sort of process it the same way. At least for me, it slows me down. And I noticed the whole crew is worse with not having a lunch than just taking the half an hour and just.
And there's a fine line too between, like, you don't want to, like, lose your energy.
Oh no.
You want to have, like, a heavy lunch and lose your energy, and then you're like, it's hard to ramp back up. So, like, and getting that right is key. It's hard. And I know as a producer, it's like it's a struggle, because it's like, you can get their lunch there early, and then everyone's eating cold food because our last shot took 45 minutes.
Yeah, you can feel it too. They're like, okay, everyone's they're done, they're looking around. Like, let's get going. And you want to just basically ask permission in most of those cases, like, hey guys, we're supposed to be back in a couple minutes. Are we good to go? Yeah, cool, let's go. And most of the time, everyone's good to go. And they know that, like, if they sit around another 5 minutes, they're going to be out of it. Like, but
then also, like, the importance of, like, craft service, and, like, talk to a friend, hey, could you come out and, make food for us? That is so much better sometimes than, like, let's get sandwiches, or let's, like, try to order something. And also, like, making sure you come in with, like, a cooler full of drinks and a bunch of power bars and all that stuff. That's also key.
Coffee in the morning.
I know we're getting into the weeds of all this, but, like, that can really save, people, these are almost always at least a 12-hour day. So, these things are really important to, keep people's blood sugar up. It's extremely taxing mental work, or just staying focused is hard if you're just, I have one job, but you're going to get distracted or whatever if you don't keeping your blood sugar up. So, making sure you just have a good snack box is key too. Anyway. There's that.
No, I would agree. Absolutely. Lunch and food, the snacks, very important.
And those things are easy to do.
From the other side, I mean, it's like you get there in the morning, you have your, like, like you said, tea, coffee, bagels. And because it is on our side, the talent side, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. And so, your energy goes up and down and up and down. So I would agree that, like, the food is good. It keeps you going.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, at the end of the day, when people are walking away from that shoot, if it was really lean and you didn't get any breaks and the food was shitty, you're going to be more likely to want to bill more overtime, be a little bit more hardcore or harsh on the end of it. So, like, as a producer or as, like, an account executive, when you're trying to, like, keep things under budget, your crew is going to be a lot more forgiving if they were fed well and treated well. And that's an important note. After the fact, when suddenly you've got a bunch of people that aren't budging on anything.
And don't underestimate the people. People usually remember production when they don't feed well. It could be a huge production, but if they don't got a really good food, they will remember. They will remember.
And anyone can answer this one. What are the top 3 lessons you've learned from pre-production? And maybe all of you can answer. Maybe you can all take turns saying what your top 3 lessons you've learned from pre-production are. And anyone can go first. You don't have to raise your hands. You can just call it out.
I've definitely learned that being in the place and doing an actual scout and just like walking through stuff that seems super mundane is important. And when directors or whoever it is like doesn't want to do that, it's usually a bad sign to me, because what's in their mind never really transfers to what we're going to actually do, no matter how good they are. And that's not on them at all. It's just like, once you get in the actual space and walk through the mechanics of the scene, it changes everything at least a little bit. So I think that's like the most key thing to getting started, is actually just walking through it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For me as an editor, I will say is read the script
Mm-hmm.
and identify like key moment in the script and try to discuss that with the director or the DP or the art department and see how they're seeing those images in their mind, and try to come up in an agreement, or see if I'm seeing the same for the edit, and let's try to get the right shot for that moment in the story, and not only one part of the script, I will say the whole story, because usually the edit is always at the end, but I think it's really important at the beginning to start working with the director, DP, and everybody to know what how it's gonna come, and also if you can give some insight in how you also are seeing the scenes and the movie, and that also will help the DP to know where to put the camera, the director maybe how the actors need to do in order to get that scene that we all agree on. It will work better for the story. I think that's super important. And these days, I think the editing, even the color, is being getting into more into pre-production than before. These two were like, I don't know, 10 years ago, always at the end, and you get with everything already cooked, and you need to prepare a whole meal with something that is already, pretty much done. And you can play still a lot, but you have now way more, I would say, chances to build a whole story in a way better way than before, because you have more chances to add to those people. Not add, to talk to those people and and find a better way to tell that story.
I'll do a quick list. Shot listing. Make sure you confirm that everyone gets the call sheet, and that's key. Is to if you use a call sheet tool, they usually have a thing where you can, like Studio Binder has this, where you can go in and verify that they've received it and opened it. That's really key. And even if it's not going to be 100%, still include a schedule in that shot list so people know what to expect, or in the call sheet so people know what to expect.
Yeah, and one last thing I didn't talk about, because what you're saying is super important from like a logistics standpoint, is making sure as a producer that you have the proper paperwork for people to sign on set.
Oh yeah.
And if you're trying to get people paid on set too, coming with the petty cash or the checks pre-written or whatever. Like, I think it's a super hassle to have actors that are there for like $50 for an hour or whatever it is, like small little things. To go through the whole invoicing process if you don't have to is a total hassle.
Make sure you have the permits too.
That's, Just making sure that the stuff that you don't have to have, but that you should have, like at least putting that through your mind and putting it on a list and and guaranteeing that like we're gonna have to have people sign something to shoot at this location, and we have to have our releases and everything. That's something that when you're early in your career, a lot of times you forget, or you don't even know about rather. And then when you're later in your career, you're like, yeah, it's fine, we don't need them. But I think that's, paramount to making sure that things run smoothly, because that's you on the line. That's your ass if you forget.
Get those releases done right away. Put that area release up, even though I've never had anyone want to see the tape on an area release. Still, put it up. It's a nice thing to do. It makes you look professional, no matter what you're doing. It's still, I think it's smart. And there's a lot of liability that you'd be surprised what could come up. So it's a litigious society we're in. So, putting that up, taking a shot of it, making sure that, if you're doing something that's sort of, whatever, that you've got that area release up, semi-public, that sort of thing. And, you know, and then having all those talent releases, that's really key. And making sure that they sign, you know, beforehand, before they get going. Because if they have a shitty time, they might not want to sign afterwards. And you can't control, you know, you never know what could go wrong. They might really struggle, and then they might not want to sign afterwards, and then you could be in a real pickle. So, you know, get it all done ahead of time.
Especially for more unscripted stuff, yeah, that could be a nightmare. If you don't, you know, like you've done an hour and a half interview and they realize that they don't sound that good, or they said something they never thought they were going to say, like that's a huge problem. So yeah, definitely getting everything, you know, all the paperwork done ahead of time is super important.
Yep.
Would you say you guys like working with the same crew and the same group of people all the time, or is it fun to kind of branch out and work with new people all the time, or like how do you guys like to work that?
I would say that it is comfortable to work with the same crew, especially if you like how their style is. And most of the time, if you're going to work with them a lot, you're going to like that. And so that can be great. I also think one of the greatest parts of filmmaking is making new teams and being part of a team with new people that you don't know, and like sort of showing off your skills too. Like that's a fun part. And also having people be like, wow, you're really good at this, or I like that shot, or whatever. And I think the more you work with someone, the less that stuff sort of naturally comes out, because you're like, well, yeah, it was good. You're always good. Or like, you do good stuff. That's why I hire you. And so I think it works both ways. But on something that's crucial, like on a project that you know that is going to be heavy, it's going to take a long time, and you need to execute just so, I think it is very important that you work with people you trust and you understand and you already have shorthand with.
Sure. That makes sense. What would you say is the most difficult part about being in pre-production?
The most difficult part is just in your mind actually checking off all the things before you're even there and before you have a chance to realize what the problems are going to be. So you're kind of like guessing a lot of stuff of like what could go wrong, which is sort of a weird place to be. You're trying to find out problems before they happen, even if they might never happen. And that's a really good place. If I go up to a producer and I'm like, hey, what about, and they're like, oh yeah, no, 3 different contingency plans for that. And I'm like, cool, you know what you're doing. And if I go up to them and I'm like, what about, you know, like the other bag or whatever? And they're like, oh, never thought about that. And I'm like, ooh, we're in trouble.
Yeah, asking difficult questions is hard, and you know, raising your hand. Everyone's trying to move forward. You know, especially with a lot of corporate stuff, you're dealing with like whoever from wherever at some business, and they don't want to go through all this. They got tasked with producing the video, but you have to be like, hey, look, I have to run through these questions with you. Like, we've got 8 people that are coming into your office space. Where are we going to go to the bathroom? Where are we going to eat lunch? Like all that kind of stuff is like really key. And especially in corporate video, which I think really pays the bills for a lot of us, you know, doing that is awkward. They're like, why are you bothering me with all these questions? I got 1,000 other things to do, but you have to do that stuff, you know. And you know, where are my guys gonna park? You know, that's always a thing for me. I'm like, you know, okay, I got people coming in, where are they parking? I had a client who was just like, they'll park where they find parking. And I'm like, look, man, if you want to make your day, then like we can't have our talent who's coming in there with like 3 different outfits, like park where they find it. Like they need to come in there and have a spot and know that they're going to pull in this garage. We're going to validate or pay for that. And so you have to, you know, go over all that stuff, because, you know, at the end of the day, if they leave and their car has been stolen or something, you know, I mean, it's going to come back on you. And you know, having those conversations about insurance, and, you know, if you're an account executive or producer, you sold a job, you just want to be like, yeah, everything's great, everything's going to be fine. But you really do have to find that way to have all these kind of conversations with people and make sure that, you know, you really go down that checklist, because a lot of these things can really derail something, especially in corporate. You know, look, we're going to have to come in the loading dock, you know, like thinking about it that way, like we can't walk in the front entrance of your company, you know, we've got to come in the loading dock. Or like, I got a bunch of guys coming, what kind of ID do they need? You know, all that kind of stuff is really key. Like we've in the area we're in, we've done a lot of shoots at casinos, and casino security is like super insane. And they want to know, like we had a guy whose driver's license was expired, but he had, you know, he went and got a, he got it renewed, but he only had the piece of paper. Well, they wouldn't accept that. So that was like, you know, 24 hours of like trying to figure that out. But like, if we hadn't got that to them, asked them if this was okay, no, it's not okay. You know, all that kind of stuff, it's super important because, you know, I've had a lot of shoots really delayed for hours and hours because we got there and the security guys are like, we're not doing this, or that person's name wasn't on our list. So, you know, and if you don't talk about that ahead of time, you're going to find out at the worst possible time, which is the next day.
All the small details.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Another thing that you also need to consider is putting in your contract a lot of like stipulations. And for example, in my case, we're editing like how many revisions the video is going to have.
Oh God. Yeah.
Because you can, like, if you don't, you know, make that clear at the beginning, and then you're working in whatever, mostly in corporative videos, is like, you can end up with like 20 versions of the video, 20 revisions, and every single revision, sometimes, you know, they ask you to, oh, this looks great. Oh, now we need to remove this and put it at the beginning, and from the stuff in the beginning, put it in the back. Okay, you do that, and then you're in revision 19, and they tell you, oh, you know what? I like version 2. Let's put that stuff that it was in the back now in the beginning, and the beginning in the back. And then you say, shoot, I already did the whole graphics, the whole color base in that order. Now I need to change, and it changed the whole structure of the video. So it's basically, you need to re-edit the whole thing. And that's,
I mean, there's a lot of like
almost redoing the project.
Yeah, there's a lot, like we could have this conversation on physical production, and then we could also have this conversation on pre-production for post-production, because like post-producer is a big job, and you see ads for them all the time. And I think the reason it's an in-demand role is that, you know, someone really has to like monitor that process. And as like at our level of production, you know, we all wear different hats. Like, you know, we're all editing and doing that stuff. But like, if you're going to edit, you need to edit all day long. Like if you're sitting there, like composing emails and go, okay, this is version, whatever, you're editing, you're just like spitting them out. Okay, fine, here, I'll spit this out. It's easier to just do this quickly and get it out. But, you know, it's very important for a producer to, in post, you know, be managing those versions, sort of good cop, bad cop it with the editor, so that, yeah, I mean, look, there's always more than 3 versions. Everyone knows that. But, you know, telling the client, look, you're getting 3 versions, and then by version 5, you're like, okay, this has got to be the last one, or we're going to have a minor change order, no big deal. You know, so monitoring that process, making sure you're not putting your editor on the line. So let them be the good guy, you be the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, look, Moro's got to move on to other projects. We can't have all of his time eaten up by this. You know, we're going to do one more, but please make sure you talk to your end client first before we, you know, keep moving.
Another thing that is really important in pre-production, it's actually related to post-production, because I will say, and you guys back me up on this and you agree or not, but a lot of time, most of the pre-production is focused on the production day. And production days usually are 1, 2, 3. If you're in a big project, it could be a week or 2. And you only spend that time doing the production and the pre-production, I don't know, a month before, in order to work those 3 or 5 days. But then you're editing for like a month or 2 months, and in project you're editing for the year. So a lot of the time I've seen like the producers put so much attention on the production day and save a lot of money and a ton of money, try to save and not spend too much there. But they forgot about the post-production, and then everything that they tried to save for those 5 days, they have to spend it on the post-production because it took longer, or even they spend more because it was way longer than they expected. So you really need to focus really well your energy. Yeah, you need to save sometimes money in the production, but sometimes it's better to spend more money in the production day in order to make the post-production really, you know, efficient. So you're going to spend maybe the right amount of money, instead like saving a ton of money here and then waste the whole money you save and more later on, because you're going to have 3 times the color correction, 2 times or 4 times the graphics, you know, you're going to have to reshoot, I don't know, all that kind of stuff, and it happens, and it's not fun.
And thinking too about like charts, you know, in every new setting, like does that help you out, Mauricio and Justin, as an editor, to like make sure that you shoot the color chart and all that stuff in each setting?
So sometimes it helps, sometimes it's
yeah, it's depending on the project. It's depending on the project. If you're doing, you know, a documentary, it's not really worth it. But if you have the time to do it, it helps. It helps a lot to save some time. And sometimes even you don't need to do the charts, because if you talk with the DP and you agree on using a lot or certain kind of, you know, you're not going to expose over these F stuff, or you're not going to wonder and all that kind of stuff, you can manage later. You have, you know, something that kind of pretty similar in post, because, you know, for based on scenes or where you're shooting, and then you just apply one lot or your one corrections. So you can manage that.
I think a more important thing to do is, if you think you might want a slate, then definitely do a slate, even if it's just holding it in, showing where you're at in, you know, in a corporate place, or who's talking, or any of those things. You never really know how far apart from the process the editor is, or maybe whoever producer happens to be handling the post-production.
Or you have multiple editors during the process.
Yeah, the more information you get on a slate, at least, I think is super crucial. And that has color bars on it anyway. I mean, it's not a Macbeth chart, but it's a similar thing. There's
always getting those people to say their names on camera too. Is key, and get them to do it a few different ways too.